It's the best way to start your NFL Sunday. Welcome everybody back to Sunday Morning Slants. I'm your host, Matt Watson, joined alongside Pat and Mason. How are we tonight, boys?
Splendid.
Stellar.
Love to hear it. And so tonight we are going to be talking about why Joe Burrow will finally win the MVP, or on the flip side, why Joe Burrow is not going to win the MVP. So that'll be our topic for tonight. But in case you missed last week's episode, we talked about the NFC East and all the storylines coming out of the East with Michael Parsons and his contract situation with the Cowboys, Terry McLaurin holding out with the Commanders, and then we discussed whether or not we feel as though the Eagles will repeat as division champs. So if you missed that one, feel free to go back and check that out. But tonight, we're going to be talking about Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that missed the postseason last year by one game. Finally, a healthy Joe Burrow played a full season with the Bengals, something he hasn't done in quite a few years. But it was not good enough. Bengals have one of the worst defenses in all football. And because of that, they lost out and were eliminated in the last week of the season when the Denver Broncos defeated the Kansas City Chiefs in a game the Chiefs did not play any starters. So the Bengals missed out on the postseason. And because of that, they're a team with a lot of question marks heading into this year. But the only thing that, is for certain is that Joe Burrow is one of the probably definitely top five. I would say at least top three quarterbacks in the National Football League. So Burrow had a great year last year statistically, but the team did not have a great season. And so tonight we're going to talk about whether or not Burrow could take it to another level and win the MVP. So I'm going to start with Pat tonight. Pat, who has, all of the lovely quarterback takes that you could ask for out of a football fan. He has Tanner McKee as his background. So something great is about to happen here. So Pat, will Joe Burrow win the MVP? Yes or no?
I don't even think that Joe Burrow will come in the top 10 of MVP voting this year. Joe Burrow is such a fascinating person. He threw for almost 5,000 yards last year. Obviously, they barely missed the playoffs. But he's just like, he doesn't have the killer instinct that I want out of my starting quarterback. I think you asked this before the show, like, what's the factor that's keeping Joe Burrow from winning the MVP? And I think it's Joe Burrow. I think if I put Tanner McKee on that Bengals offense,
here we go.
He might play both sides of the ball. Tanner McKee might get on safety and start playing a little bit of defense. But to be real, I just don't think Joe Burrow is like anything more than kind of a upper middle of the pack type of quarterback. I think he just will continuously miss the playoffs, be riddled with injury, or just kind of, make it to a wild card game, maybe show out a little bit. But to me, he just doesn't have that it factor that inspires the team to continue going and to push forward that other quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts, like Pat Mahomes, even Lamar Jackson. Like, I think of those players as such dynamic quarterbacks and such good players and such team players that I just don't think that Joe Burrow has that it factor to push him across the line. And I know that's such a non-answer, but when you win 2-time comeback player of the year, it doesn't exactly inspire me that you're going to win MVP one of these days.
All mostly valid points. There's one or two of those that I might not necessarily follow up on, but fair enough. Mason, I'll throw it over to you. Joe Burrow, can he win the MVP this season? Will he win the MVP of the season?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. I only heard about like half of what Pat said because as soon as Pat said he didn't have a killer instinct, I had to Google this to make sure this story was true. But did you hear the story about it was one of his youth sports coaches was a sociology professor, and he told Joe Burrow's parents that if he weren't an athlete, he'd probably be a serial killer because he's just laser focus and non-emotion and just locked in, his heart rate doesn't change when he's in the moment. So I think that's a little, I think Joe Burrow is a baller, but I will still say, I don't think he's going to win the MVP because of just everything else around him. I tried to do a little research on who the worst players to win or the worst teams to have an MVP. And to me, it just seems like in the NFL that we have today, it's become such a wins-driven award. Even if a guy like Joe Burrow last year was clearly probably the best quarterback in the league, I think wins matter so much. And I think the other side of the ball for the Bengals is what's going to be holding him back again. I mean, we just saw the Eagles' third stringers torch the starting defense for the Bengals, imagine what the Ravens are going to do, because we saw it last year. Joe Burrow is going to have to put up 45 plus points a game for his team to be competitive. And I just don't like, I think they'll beat up on the teams that are obviously worse than them, kind of just looking over their schedule a little bit. I mean, they have, let's see, like the Jags, they could beat that team. The Browns, I think they could take care of the Jets, teams like that. But I mean, even in past years, they've won games that they've gone into and you think this is winnable. And I think the defense is just going to let him down to the point where no matter what he does, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and again, those are all valid reasons as to why he might not win the MVP. But I also feel as though, and I do believe that he's going to win the MVP this year, or else I wouldn't have sparked this conversation. I think a lot of those factors are what's going to help him win the MVP. Now, the award itself should be based on the present season. There should not be any external factors going into it. It should be, what do you see during the regular season this season that determines the most valuable players? I think last year, if Joe Burrow hadn't been on the Bengals, they might have won 3 games all season. I think that's how bad the talent was on Cincinnati Bengals, especially on the defense. We know they have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, 2 of the best receivers in football. I think Chase Brown's a very quality running back. Mike Gesicki had a breakout season at tight end. So I think they have very quality players on the offensive side of the ball and below average players at best on defense. Now, Trey Hendrickson is one of the best edge rushers in the game, but he might not play a snap for the Bengals this year. And I think Hendrickson, of the holdouts we're seeing across the league, I feel as though he very well would sit out the entire season and not play another snap for Cincinnati. I do think that's the level that his, frustration is with the team at this point. So I think the defense maybe is marginally better at best, but I highly doubt the defense has improved from last year to this season. And I think Joe Burrow is going to have to put up those same kind of numbers in order for the Bengals to be a competitive team. Strength of schedule, they're middle of the pack this year, which I think is an upgrade over where they were a season prior. And so I think that they will be playing some lesser opponents. I do think that teams, around the league are going to take a little bit of a step back, which also helps Joe Burrow. So last year, Saquon Barkley finished second in MVP voting and third, I believe. And he had the greatest season for a running back of all time. Chances are it's not going to happen again. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen both put up supreme seasons, and while they're definitely very capable of doing that, I don't think those are some of the numbers you're not going to put in and year out. And I think Joe Burrow has to put up those numbers for the Bengals to be good. I think the defense is going to give up a lot of points, giving him more opportunities for passing touchdowns and passing yards, and comeback drives, etc. So I think those opportunities are going to help inflate his numbers just even a bit more than they were last year. And I think those numbers are going to help. And like I mentioned with the external factors, I don't think last season should come into play. But I do think that the award voters are human, and they're going to remember that last season he pushed them to the very brink to get into the playoffs. And they, it was out of their hands, and that's why they didn't make the postseason late in the year. If they had fixed themselves at any point, they would have made the playoffs, but they didn't. So he willed them to at least a playoff opportunity late in the year. They didn't get it. I think if they are sitting in a position where they make the playoffs as like a 7th seed this year or are right on the cusp again, I do think that human factor will come into play. And I do think that Joe Burrow will get the benefit of the doubt in that regard. And so I think if he can put up similar numbers, if not better than what he did last year, I think he can walk away with an MVP this season.
I think it's just fascinating because, like, even as I hear you and Mason talk about it, like, I think about the fact that a quarterback who goes 8-9 across the season is not necessarily in the minds of the MVP voters as like, that's the MVP, because his team only won 8 games and your quarterback is so associated with that winning mentality and wins are a QB stat. But like, if you are the most generational rusher of all time and your team goes 8-9, but you put up numbers nobody's ever seen before, like, your odds of winning MVP are so much higher, even though you're on a losing team. It almost feels like the deck is stacked against him. I think he could throw for like 5,000 yards, but if your team doesn't go above 500, like, and you miss the playoffs, I just don't think you're ever really going to win it. I mean, I don't know what the worst team record for a QB MVP was, but it just feels like if you don't even broach that 500 number, you're just not going to have any chance of doing it. But any other position, a wide receiver like catches like 35, 40 touchdowns in a season and goes for like 2,500 yards, like, yeah. And if they're on like an 8-9 team, they might have a chance of winning it, but a QB, I don't see them ever doing it without a winning record.
So yeah, just kind of going back to the whole like wins matter so much for QBs. I did look it up. So the worst record that a QB has won MVP is 11-5, and it's been done 4 times. The other players that I was talking about were to kind of just boost Pat's point. Barry Sanders in 97, the Lions were 9-7 that year. But I think, and then there were 2 running backs who I think were 10-6. Marshall Faulk and Adrian Peterson. I think it kind of just goes to that point, like Pat was saying, you could be, which now in the NFL it seems like even Saquon last year, like it's just not going to happen. It's not going to not be a quarterback anymore. But I think when you even have a team that's like got a lesser record such as 10-6 and running back makes such a difference, it's easier to see them as the MVP. But wins are so tied to quarterbacks that, like, are the Bengals going to be 11-6 this year? They very well could, but I mean, the defense could really hold that back. And if they get to 10 wins and are a 7 seed, I think it's borderline. Like, I don't know what you think of this year, but do you think if the Bengals won 10 games and were a 7 seed, do you think Joe Burrow would have beaten out Josh Allen? Like, let's say next year the same thing happens and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have a comparable season, and the Bengals win 10 games and Joe Burrow does something similar. It'll just be close, I think.
I think it'd be much closer in that regard. It also, I think, depends on, I guess, the resume of the season for both at that point, the Bills and the Ravens. Like,
probably
how did Josh Allen perform against top opponents?
Yeah, because I think, obviously they play the Ravens, and the Bengals and Bills do face off this year, so that'll definitely factor in as well.
Head-to-head matchups should definitely come into factor there. I would think, anyway.
Actually, that's rough. The Bengals played the Ravens, Bills, and Ravens back-to-back at the end of November into December.
That is tough, but if they could somehow pull away.
If Joe Burrow wins those 3 games, that's going to be big. He could win it just in those 3 weeks.
I might not have looked at the schedules as closely as, well, no, I don't ever look at the schedules closely, but this is the second schedule I'm hearing of like a divisional opponent with a 1 week separation. The Eagles have it, and now you're telling me the Bengals have it?
NFL
the Dolphins have it, I think, too. The Bucks I think every team might have. It's just awful schedule making is what it is.
They still got like 2 people in a room, and they're like just drawing on whiteboards like the MLB does it.
I think it would have been a much better job. I think I handpicked the fantasy schedule for our league this year, and we got nothing like that. So
I was
I do think maybe one or 2 teams does have a similar. Regardless, though, you could just plug it in AI or something, and they can do it for you. But
that's what they should be doing now.
That's just what they should be doing. So, okay. Well, obviously it remains to be seen. I think number 1, Joe Burrow needs to be healthy in order to be in the MVP conversation at the season, end of the season. He's been, I think, the most sacked quarterback since he joined the NFL. And I know the Bengals have upgraded their offensive line significantly for when he joined the league, but still not a stout unit by any means. So keeping Burrow healthy will be priority number 1 as we watch the MVP race unfold in front of us. Starting in just a couple of weeks. So September 4th, NFL kicks off, Eagles and the Cowboys. But staying in the AFC North, we're now going to be talking about the division winner. So obviously we referenced the Baltimore Ravens. They won the division last year. Lamar Jackson was a finalist for MVP and had just another phenomenal season. You have the Pittsburgh Steelers, who did go out and trade for DK Metcalf from the Seattle Seahawks this offseason, what I consider to be a big upgrade. But then they shipped George Pickens to the Dallas Cowboys. And you went from having what I thought could be a really good, tandem, is now you have DK Metcalf as your number 1. And they obviously did, of course, sign Aaron Rodgers to be their quarterback for the season. So, I know what we saw with the Jets the last couple of years, but, I wouldn't necessarily count out Rodgers with the Steelers defense. And then you have the Cleveland Browns, who have resorted back to being the Cleveland Browns of old. We do not know who's going to play quarterback for them week to week. Shador Sanders is out here celebrating and walking out to his music in his first preseason game. Joe Flacco's happy to collect a paycheck. So, the Browns are back to being the Browns. But Mason, I'll start with you in what seems like might be a 2-team race in the AFC North between maybe 3 Bengals, Steelers, and Ravens. But who do you have winning the AFC North this season, and why?
Yeah, I see it as just a clear 2-horse race. Like I just don't see how you can logically think that Aaron Rodgers, after what you saw with the Jets, is just going to be any. I mean, I guess the Jets defense was supposed to be good too, though. So you can even argue with the Steelers defense. I just don't see them competing with the firepower that the Ravens and the Bengals have. But I think between those two teams, I just have to go with the Ravens. I mean, they're tried and true, and just going back to what we've been reiterating here is the Bengals defense, I think, is just going to end up holding them back. I think they can maybe win 10, 11 games with that defense, unless Joe Burrow throws for like 5,500 yards. And even then, like, they still might hold them back that much. And I think the Ravens can easily win 12 games. And I think that'll be enough for the division at this point between everybody else. I think they're probably going to beat up on the Browns, everybody in the division. And somehow the Steelers always compete within the division, but we'll see with Aaron Rodgers in there. But yeah, I think it'll be the Ravens. It might be close, but I think if they get to 12 wins again, it's their division.
All right, Pat, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, honestly, I'm inclined to agree. Browns and Steelers, I don't even think are in the conversation. Steelers, I just love to bash on, but I just really, truly, I know everybody raves about their defense, but you got to have a good offense to win games too. And I just don't see them performing this year. But the Ravens, like, you look at their lineup, like I have it up right here. Like, you look at obviously Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, but all the way down the board, like, Mark Andrews, to be seen if he's going to have a good season this season. I felt like last season he fell off a little bit, but you look at the defense, and I recognize almost all these names, which is a good thing because I'm a non-ball knower. So, like, you look at like Kyle Van Noy, Kyle Hamilton, Nate Wiggins, right, Jair Alexander, Marlon Humphrey. Like, there's some great names, and then they have some great names on the offensive line. Ronnie Staley, Linderbaum, right? Guys that I know and recognize as veterans on the offensive line. And I think we obviously just talked about it with Joe Burrow and with the Bengals' defensive struggles. I just think the Ravens might run away with the division. I mean, if you play the Ravens or if you play the Steelers and the Browns, it's 4 guaranteed wins right there. And then Lamar Jackson is just so good that I really think that they're probably going to run away with it. I like Mason's prediction of like 12 wins, maybe 12-5. But I could see them going like 13-4, maybe even winning 14 games. Who knows? But I'm picking the Ravens.
For sure. Yeah, and I'm not going to shake the apple cart here. I'm going to go with the Ravens. I think they're, out of all the divisions, they might be the most clear favorite. I mean, I guess Buffalo in the AFC East as well, but New England is catching a lot of publicity with Drake May's second season. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the Ravens. I do see that the Bengals are the second favorite in terms of betting odds to win the North, and then the Steelers are third. So that does kind of track with what we're saying here. But, yeah, I think this is Baltimore's division to lose. I think, as long as Lamar stays healthy, there's no reason why the Ravens can't win this division. So I do think that for Baltimore, it's just another season of get me to the postseason. I think, especially with Lamar at this point in his career, he has 2 regular season MVPs. He's won division titles. He's gotten to the dance late in the season, but he has just not been able to overcome Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes in the biggest games of the season. Obviously, the Eagles and Tampa Bay a few years ago with Brady were the only teams that have stopped Mahomes since he's gone on this reign of terror, since he's become the Chiefs quarterback. And Josh Allen hasn't been able to take out Mahomes, and Lamar hasn't been able to take out either of them. So I think this is going to be a big year for Lamar in the sense that, like, it kind of is put up or shut up in a sense. I mean, it's not like the Ravens are going to go out and replace him by any means, but it does get to a point where you need to have a season where you at least, maybe making a Super Bowl appearance. You don't have to necessarily win the Super Bowl, but as getting there just would do wonders for his, for his career and his resume. Do you guys think that the Ravens could potentially make the Super Bowl, or do you think this is just Mahomes and Allen trying to figure out who's going to get the go this year?
I mean, I think they can make it. I think they would have made it last year if poor Mark Andrews didn't drop that ball.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking the same exact thing.
I mean, I guess you could say like the Bills had their shot, but I don't know. I don't know how none of those teams were able to beat up on the Chiefs. I don't know.
We made it look so easy. We did it
I
on the
don't
biggest
know.
stage.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened.
I don't know what the struggle was, but I mean they're close. I think the agenda behind Lamar Jackson's failures in the playoffs are kind of like last year. You can't really blame that on him, and I know in years past, especially his rookie year, like that's on him. But I think he's showed improvement, and I don't see why they can't get there. I feel like every year he's improved. I don't know what their I don't know how many first game exits they've had, but I feel like he's steadily improved.
I mean, steadily improved just in a sense goes from a first round elimination to winning at least 1 or 2 rounds. So I know 2 years ago they obviously made the championship game against the Chiefs and lost.
Let's see.
Last year they lost the semis to Buffalo. It's just
2019
been the
they
same story.
lost. 2020 they won 1 game and then lost. 2022 they lost. So yeah, he hasn't made a. Oh no, they did when they were in the conference championship 2023. So
yeah, Lamar's 3-5 his record in the postseason. So
that's tough.
he has won 1 game in each of the last 3 postseasons.
I mean, those losses.
Well,
I guess his first year that 2018 against the Chargers.
Yep.
Can't really blame him for that. It was his rookie year. And then his other losses are Bills, Bengals, Chiefs, Bills, and then there's the Titans in there too. But the Titans were kind of nasty that year. So
yeah. I mean, that's the thing with the AFC. It's just loaded with quarterbacks. So it's difficult for you to go on a run when you know you're going to face up against an elite talent each round. So remains to be seen. But we are all picking the Baltimore Ravens to win the AFC North. I know last week I picked the Commanders. You guys, as well as Kyle, picked the Eagles in the NFC East. So as we get closer to the season, we will be continuing our division picks. And then, shortly before kickoff, we'll definitely reveal our Super Bowl prediction as well. So, that's all we have for tonight. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Make sure you check out last week's episode as well. We'll be live again Tuesday at 8:00 next week. Topic to be announced soon. So appreciate everybody for listening, and make sure you're like, subscribe, follow us on Twitter, all that good stuff. But have a great night.